The words hit me harder than any slap could have. He said it so casually, so coldly, as if he were commenting on the weather. "Face it," he murmured, swirling his glass of wine. "You wouldn't last a week without me." The laughter from our dinner guests filled the background, the clinking of forks and wine glasses covering the sound of my breaking heart. My husband, ex I should say now, sat across from me, his smile polite, his tone dripping with arrogance. Everyone heard it. Everyone pretended not to, but I didn't. I felt my stomach twist, the heat rising behind my eyes. My hands trembled slightly, hidden under the white tablecloth. He didn't even look at me as he said it. That was the worst part. He just turned to his brother, smirking. "She means well, but you know how she is, emotional, impulsive." She'd fall apart without structure, without me, and they all laughed. Like I was a joke. Like my dreams were a punchline. In that moment, something inside me shattered. But something else. Ignited. I didn't say a word. I smiled even, nodded politely. Because if he thought I'd crumble, he hadn't seen what I was capable of when I stopped needing anyone's permission to breathe. That night, when the guests left and the lights dimmed, I stared at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked tired, not from work but from being small for too long. I whispered to myself, "You'll see. I'll prove it. I'll make it, not just without him, in spite of him." He had no idea what he'd just started, but maybe I didn't either, because sometimes freedom doesn't begin with courage. It begins with someone underestimating you. He thought I'd never leave. But the next morning I did, with nothing but a suitcase and a promise. The question was, how far could I really go before everything fell apart? The morning I left, the world felt still, too still, like it was holding its breath with me. I didn't take much: a suitcase, my laptop, and a few photos I couldn't bear to throw away. Not even of him, but of me from before him. The version of myself that smiled without asking for permission first. He was still asleep when I slipped out. I remember how quiet the door sounded when it clicked shut, how final it felt. Like the closing of a life I'd been trapped in. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely fit the key into my car ignition. But I didn't cry, not this time. I'd wasted too many tears on promises that turned to manipulation, on love that came with fine print and control. When I drove away from that house, the one we picked out together, with its perfect garden and hollow walls, I didn't look back. I just kept my eyes on the road, the sun barely rising over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and defiance. But by noon, the panic hit. Where would I go? What would I do? He'd made sure I depended on him, financially, emotionally, socially. Every decision I made had to go through his approval first. Every success I'd tried to claim, he'd found a way to shrink down to nothing. I found a cheap one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. The kind of place where the pipes creaked and the heater wheezed like it was tired of existing. The kind of place you only saw when life stripped you of everything comfortable. But you know what? That first night, sitting on the floor with takeout and no furniture, I felt free. Terrified, yes. But free. The silence was loud. No footsteps pacing. No sighs of disappointment. No sharp words disguised as jokes. Just me. My thoughts. My breathing. My future. I got a job at a small marketing firm the next week. Nothing glamorous, but mine. My own paycheck. My own alarm clock. My own voice, but freedom doesn't come cheap. He started calling. At first it was calm. "You're overreacting. Come home. Be reasonable." Then it turned into threats. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. You need me." Each voicemail made me sick, not because I believed him, but because a part of me still feared he might be right. One night, I sat on my tiny balcony, wrapped in a blanket, listening to his words on repeat. "You'll never make it without me." Something inside me hardened. Maybe I didn't have a fancy house anymore. Maybe my friends, our mutual friends, stopped calling. Maybe I had no plan. But I had something better. I had nothing left to lose. And that's when everything changed. Because the next morning, I woke up with a decision. If he thought I couldn't survive without him, I'd do more than survive. I'd rise. The day I decided to rise, I didn't have a plan. Just a pulse and a promise. I woke up before dawn, brewed instant coffee in a chipped mug, and stared out the window of my little apartment. The city was still dark, half asleep, but I wasn't. My heart was pounding with something I hadn't felt in years. Control. I started small. I made a list on a scrap of paper. Find direction. Build confidence. Become unrecognizable. At work, I kept my head down. No one knew what I'd been through, and I didn't tell them. They saw a quiet woman, polite, punctual, invisible. But I was studying, watching, learning. I took every project no one wanted. Stayed late. Taught myself new skills from YouTube tutorials and free webinars. Every night when I got home, I'd sit cross-legged on the floor, laptop open, exhaustion clinging to me like fog. And I'd keep going. I could almost hear his voice sometimes, echoing in my head. "You'll burn out. You're not built for this." And I'd whisper back, "Watch me." My boss noticed. One afternoon, she called me into her office. My stomach twisted. Old habits die hard. I braced for criticism. Instead, she smiled. "You've got a spark, you know that? Keep this up, and you could be leading your own campaign soon." Those words felt like sunlight cracking through storm clouds. I walked out of that office with shaking hands and the biggest smile I'd worn in years. For the first time, someone saw me, not as a shadow of someone else, but as me. I started going for morning runs. I reconnected with old college friends online, people I'd cut off when my life became a performance for him. Slowly, I began to feel whole again, but healing isn't glamorous. It's messy. Some nights I'd still cry on the bathroom floor. Some mornings I'd scroll through his social media, seeing him with his perfect new girlfriend, pretending he'd moved on. I'd wonder if he was watching me too. Waiting for me to fail. That thought became fuel. I started my own small online business, a side hustle, really. I offered freelance design and branding help. The first client paid me $50. I framed the email, not for the money, but for what it meant. Proof. Proof that I was more than what he said I was. And as the weeks turned into months, that quiet fire inside me grew louder. I started dressing differently, speaking differently. Looking people in the eyes when I talked, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. But then, one evening, I got a message that nearly made my heart stop. A name flashed on my phone. His sister. We hadn't spoken since I left. Her message was short, cold. "Hey, he's been saying things about you. You might want to see this." I clicked the link, and what I saw made my blood run cold. He wasn't just telling people I'd failed, he was rewriting my story. And if he thought I'd let him destroy my name after he already broke my heart, he was about to find out who I'd become. The video was only 3 minutes long, but it felt like it lasted forever. There he was. My ex. Perfect suit, perfect posture, perfect lies. Sitting on a podcast couch, pretending to be the strong one who tried to help his unstable ex-wife. He said my name. My full name. He said I broke down after losing direction, that I was too emotional to handle real life, and that he was the one who set me free. Set me free. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling, bile rising in my throat. My heart wasn't racing. It was pounding like a drum of rage. He had turned my escape into his story, my strength into his pity narrative, and the comments. God, the comments. People believed him. She sounds crazy. He dodged a bullet. Poor guy. My phone buzzed nonstop for hours, texts from mutual friends, co-workers, even my aunt. "Is this true? Are you okay? Wow, didn't expect that from you." Each message was a dagger, twisting deeper. I sat in my tiny apartment, the glow of my laptop screen lighting my face, and for a moment, just a moment, I wanted to disappear again. Then something inside me snapped. No, not again. Not this time. He already took my confidence once, my home, my voice. He wasn't taking my truth. I shut the laptop, wiped my tears, and stood up. My reflection stared back from the dark window. Tired, yes. But there was something else in her eyes now. Fire, I whispered. You wanted a show? I'll give you one. The next day, I started recording. Not revenge, not yet. Not even response. Just truth. I talked about leaving. About starting over. About how it felt to be told you were nothing, and then learn to be everything without them. At first, I didn't even show my face. Just my voice, my words, my story. I posted clips on social media, not expecting much. But people listened. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. Messages poured in from women, strangers, saying, "That was me too." For the first time, I realized my pain wasn't just mine. It was something millions of women had swallowed in silence. I turned my story into a series, rebuilding after him. Raw, unfiltered, real. And the irony? My ex's lies pushed my story into the light. Every word he spoke became fuel for my truth. Within weeks, my name was trending. The comments under his video flipped. People started connecting the dots, calling him out, questioning everything he said. He tried to play victim again, of course. See? She's obsessed with me. But no one bought it anymore. Because by then, I wasn't talking about him. I was talking about me. And while he was busy defending his ego, I was building my empire. I upgraded my workspace, launched my own brand, a digital platform helping women rebuild after toxic relationships. I went from a handful of views to sponsorship offers and media interviews, and the more I spoke, the quieter his world became. But success didn't silence the hurt completely. Because one night, as I celebrated hitting 1 million followers, I saw something that made my stomach drop all over again. A text from a number I'd deleted long ago. "You think you've won, huh? Just wait. I didn't know it yet." But he wasn't done trying to break me. And what he did next would test everything I'd built from the ground up. At first, I thought it was just another empty threat. Another attempt to scare me into silence. But then things started to happen. Small things, subtle enough to question, but sharp enough to sting. Emails went missing. Clients suddenly backed out of contracts they'd already signed. A sponsorship deal I was thrilled about just vanished, with a vague apology from the company's PR rep. "We've been informed about some concerning background information." Concerning background information? My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who was behind it. He wasn't just angry that I left. He was angry that I thrived, that I had built something that didn't need him, that other people now looked to me instead of him. He had money, connections, influence, all the tools I didn't. And he used them the way people like him always do. Quietly, strategically, behind the scenes. But this time, I wasn't the same woman he could silence with a look or a threat. I gathered everything, screenshots, messages, emails, and I took it to my lawyer. A real one, not one of his friends in shiny suits who used to sit at our dinner table and tell me to let him handle things. When my lawyer read the threats, her jaw tightened. "He's playing dirty," she said, "but this isn't just personal anymore. This is defamation, and we can prove it." For the first time, the power started to tilt, just slightly, in my direction. Still, it hurt. I had nights when I broke down, fists pressed against my mouth to keep from sobbing too loud. Nights when I doubted everything I'd built. Every follower, every post, every speech. What if he's right? That ugly little voice whispered. What if you can't do this? But then I'd remember the woman who walked out of that house with nothing but a suitcase and courage. I'd remember how she survived, and I'd whisper back, "He doesn't get to write my ending." So I pushed harder. I started going live on camera, talking about resilience, about starting from zero, about how people will try to bury you when they realize you've learned to bloom without them. My words weren't polished. They were raw, messy, real. And that's why people listened. The views exploded. My inbox overflowed. News outlets wanted interviews. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It had become a mirror for anyone who'd ever been told they were too weak to stand alone. And then, out of nowhere, came the invitation, a national talk show, prime time, live audience. They wanted me to share my journey, my glow-up, from the woman who lost everything to the one who built a new life. I almost said no. Not because I was scared, but because I knew he'd be watching, waiting for me to stumble. But then I thought, what better stage for revenge than success itself? The night before the show, I barely slept. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, but the truth is, no amount of practice could prepare me for what was about to happen. Because as I stepped onto that stage, the lights hot on my face, the audience applauding, I saw him, sitting in the front row, smiling, like he'd come to enjoy the spectacle. I should have been terrified. But instead, I smiled back, because what he didn't know was, that night, I wasn't the one on display. He was. The applause faded into a low hum, like the air itself was holding its breath. The lights were blinding, but I could see him clearly. Front row, leaned back in that same self-satisfied posture I knew too well, one leg crossed, fingers grazing his chin, that slight smirk that always meant, I still control this narrative, but not tonight. The host smiled warmly. You've become a symbol for resilience, she said. For so many people who've been through control, manipulation, and heartbreak, and found power on the other side. Tell us, how did it all begin? My throat tightened. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echoing through the mic. For a split second, I almost defaulted to the rehearsed answer, the safe one. The version that danced around the truth without lighting it on fire. But then my eyes caught his. That smirk. That dare, and something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath. My voice trembled at first, but only for the first 3 words. It began, I said, the day I realized the person I loved most was also the one trying to make me disappear. The host froze. The audience went silent. He shifted in his seat, barely noticeable, but I saw it. I was told what to wear, what to say, who to befriend. My money was monitored. My laughter was questioned. Every dream I had was treated like a threat. I could hear whispers ripple through the audience, soft gasps, the kind of collective ache that fills a room when truth cuts too close. And when I finally left, I continued, my voice steady now, he made sure I'd pay for it. Emails, deals, lies whispered into the right ears, all to remind me that freedom had a price. The host tried to step in, voice cautious. That's incredibly brave of you to share. Was it? I didn't let her finish. Yes, I said, eyes locked on him. He's here tonight. The audience turned, hundreds of heads swiveling toward the front row. He froze. His smile cracked for the first time. The camera panned, catching just enough of him to make the crowd gasp again. He tried to play it cool, leaning forward, pretending to adjust his jacket. But I saw his hands tremble. This, I said, lifting my chin, isn't about revenge, it's about reclamation. Because when someone spends years trying to erase you, the loudest vengeance is to be unerasable. Applause erupted. Not polite, not scripted. It was the kind of applause that shakes a room, the kind that says, "We see you now." He stood up abruptly. I thought he'd leave. But instead, he forced a smile and clapped too, slow, mechanical, like he was performing control. The cameras caught everything, and as he clapped, I smiled, not with victory, but peace. Because for the first time, he was the one standing under the lights, and I was finally free. When the show ended, my phone exploded. Calls, messages, headlines spinning before I even stepped off stage. Woman confronts abuser live on TV. A masterclass in courage. But all I heard was silence. The kind that comes after years of noise, the kind that feels like peace. I walked backstage, my legs trembling. The host hugged me, whispering, "You changed lives tonight." I just nodded. Because what I really wanted to say was, I changed mine first. The morning after the show felt unreal. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Notifications piled up like an avalanche. Texts from people I hadn't heard from in years, reporters requesting interviews, and strangers sending messages that made me cry quietly over my coffee. Your story gave me courage. I left him today. I thought I was alone until I heard you. Each message was a mirror, reflecting pieces of pain I thought only I carried. I wasn't invisible anymore, and that realization hit harder than anything I'd felt in years. But freedom always comes with an aftershock. By noon, the internet had done what it does best. It turned my story into a storm. My name was trending. My face was everywhere. There were articles, think pieces, endless debates. Some called me brave. Others called me vindictive. And him? He finally broke his silence. A neatly worded statement appeared on his social media. I'm deeply saddened by the misleading portrayal of our relationship on last night's show. I wish her healing, but I also wish for fairness. Fairness. That word burned. He'd stolen years from me. He'd dimmed every dream I had. And now he wanted fairness? My publicist called, her voice urgent. He's trying to flip the narrative. He's reaching out to blogs, painting you as unstable. Of course he was. He always needed control. But this time, he wasn't whispering behind closed doors. He was screaming into a void that no longer listened. Because for every lie he told, 10 strangers came forward to defend me. Women from his past, colleagues who'd seen the manipulation, people who remembered how he twisted stories to fit his image, and one by one, the truth started stitching itself into the light. Still, the backlash hurt. My inbox overflowed with cruelty, strangers accusing me of attention-seeking, of destroying a man's life for fame. I read them all at first, until I realized I didn't have to anymore. I wasn't the same woman who once needed everyone to like her. I was the woman who had faced the man who once owned her silence, and spoken anyway. A few weeks later, I got a call from a women's foundation. They wanted me to give a keynote at their conference. Breaking Free, Voices That Rise. I almost said no. The fear was still there, whispering that I wasn't ready to be that woman, the strong one, the inspiration, the one who somehow turned pain into poetry. But then I remembered the girl I used to be. Sitting on the edge of that tiny apartment bed, staring at her phone, waiting for his approval just to breathe. And I said yes. The night of the conference, I stood before hundreds of faces. Their eyes shimmered, not with pity, but recognition. I told them everything, the control, the shame, the moment I almost gave up, and the exact second I decided never to again. And when I finished, something extraordinary happened. They stood. Every single one of them. The sound of their applause wasn't just for me. It was for every woman who had ever been told she'd fall apart without him. I walked off stage trembling, but lighter. Then, as I reached the exit, a hand brushed my arm. It was him. He looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence, like a man stripped of his script. I didn't think you'd actually do it, he said softly. You really destroyed everything. I looked at him, at the face that used to define my world, and for the first time, I didn't feel hate. Just distance. No, I said quietly. You did. I walked away before he could answer, my heels clicking against the floor like punctuation marks to the sentence I'd been writing my whole life. That was the night I stopped surviving him and started living me. The weeks that followed were a blur of motion, noise, and surreal moments that felt like scenes from a movie I'd never believed I'd star in. One day, I was giving interviews in small studios, nervously clutching a mug of coffee while bright lights blinded me. The next, I was walking through glossy hallways, my heels echoing as producers and PR teams buzzed around, calling me the woman who turned heartbreak into fire. It was intoxicating. Not because of the fame, but because I finally felt seen. For so long, I'd lived in the shadows of other people's expectations. The obedient girlfriend, the quiet daughter, the reliable employee who never made waves. And now, everywhere I went, people asked me about my story, my voice, my message. Still, success didn't come without ghosts. There were nights when I'd lie awake, staring at my ceiling, wondering if I'd gone too far. If maybe I should have kept the peace, played nice, stayed small. But then I'd remember his words, "You'll never make it without me." And that thought alone reignited every ember inside me. So I kept going. My social media began to grow. At first it was slow, a handful of followers sending encouragement. Then one clip from my conference speech went viral. In it I said, "You don't have to destroy yourself to keep someone else comfortable." That line spread like wildfire. People were quoting it, turning it into art, tattoos, journal entries. Suddenly, I wasn't just a woman who survived. I was a symbol of what happens when you stop apologizing for your own strength. Brands reached out. Publications offered columns. A small publishing house even contacted me to write a book. My book. But the best moment wasn't the contracts or the interviews. It was the morning I opened my inbox and found a message from a girl named Mia. She wrote, "I saw your story. I was in the same kind of relationship. I didn't think I could ever leave. But I did. Because of you." I stared at her words for a long time, tears blurring my vision. That message meant more than any spotlight. Because for every person who had once told me I was too emotional, too weak, too much, there was now someone like Mia, living proof that the pain I went through wasn't wasted. And just when I thought my transformation was complete, life surprised me again. I was invited to appear on a major talk show. They wanted me to tell my story to millions, live. My stomach twisted with nerves, but I said yes. I wore a sleek black suit, minimal makeup, and a confidence I'd fought tooth and nail to earn. As I sat under the studio lights, the host leaned forward and asked, "So, what would you say to the people who doubted you?" I smiled, not out of arrogance, but peace. "I'd say thank you," I answered. "Because when you told me I'd never make it without you, you gave me the best challenge of my life." The audience erupted. I felt the sound wash over me like sunlight breaking through clouds. After the show, I stepped outside into the cool night air. Flashbulbs flickered, people called my name. But for the first time, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt grounded. The city lights shimmered around me, and I caught my reflection in a glass window. Confident posture, calm smile, eyes that didn't dart nervously anymore. That's when I realized this wasn't a comeback. It was a rebirth. I wasn't proving them wrong anymore. I was proving me right. But as every story goes, just when I thought I'd reached the peak, something unexpected appeared on the horizon. A shadow from my past, holding a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Because some people don't let go. They linger, waiting to reclaim what they think still belongs to them, and I had no idea how far he'd go to pull me back. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of day that tricks you into thinking peace is permanent. I was at a cafe downtown, signing a few papers for my upcoming book deal. The air smelled like espresso and rain. Everything felt calm. Until I looked up, and there he was, Ethan, standing at the counter like a ghost who had learned how to breathe again. Same sharp jaw, same perfectly tailored jacket, but there was something new in his eyes, something brittle. When our gazes locked, time hiccuped. The sound of clinking cups faded, the chatter blurred. All I could hear was the faint echo of his voice from years ago. "You'll never make it without me." I wanted to look away, to walk out, but he was already approaching, that same confident stride, like the world still bent around him. "Wow," he said, his tone dripping with false warmth. "You've changed," I smiled thinly. That was the point. He laughed, but it was hollow. "I saw you on TV. You've got quite the fan base now. Impressive, really." The way he said impressive made my stomach twist. It wasn't admiration. It was warning. He leaned closer, voice low. "You didn't have to make me the villain, you know. You could have told your story without I stared straight at him. I didn't make you the villain, Ethan. You did that all by yourself. He froze for a second, then smirked, like he'd expected that answer but hated hearing it out loud. Careful, he murmured. You're in deep now. A few wrong words, and all of this could disappear. You know how this world works. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. But inside I was calm, almost serene. Because I finally understood something. He couldn't destroy me anymore. His power depended on my silence, and that version of me was long gone. So I leaned in, meeting his eyes. Then maybe you should have thought about that before trying to break me. He straightened, jaw tight. You'll regret this glow-up act, you know that? Fame fades. People move on. And when they do, I'll be right here, waiting for you to fall. I smiled. Slow, steady, deliberate. You've already been waiting, Ethan. That's your problem. Then I picked up my bag and walked away. My heart was racing, but not from fear, from release. I didn't look back, not once, but of course it wasn't over. A week later, a journalist sent me an email. A source claims to have information about your real past, it read. Attached was a blurry photo of me from years ago, back when I was struggling, crying outside my tiny apartment after losing my job. Ethan had sent it. I knew it immediately. His revenge wasn't physical and it was subtle, reputational. He wanted to drag me back into the mud. For a moment, old panic clawed at my throat. What if people believed him? What if everything I'd built came crashing down? But then I remembered who I'd become. I opened my camera, recorded a short video, and posted it. No filters, no edits. Just me, raw, honest. In it, I said, yes, that photo's real. That was me, heartbroken, broke, and lost. But here's the thing, I'm not ashamed. I'm proud, because that girl got back up. That girl became me. So if you're going to dig up my past, do it right, and show the part where I rose, too. The video exploded overnight. Millions of views, thousands of comments, and not a single person shamed me. They celebrated me. Ethan's attempt backfired spectacularly. He disappeared from the headlines. From my life. From my mind. And for the first time, I felt the strange, satisfying peace that only comes when you finally stop running. Not from your enemies, but from your old self. I thought that was the end. That maybe I could finally breathe again. But then my phone rang. A familiar voice. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Hey, it said softly. I saw your video. We need to talk. It's about him. And just like that, I felt the air shift again. Because sometimes when you think you've closed a chapter, someone's been waiting to reopen it. When I heard his brother's voice on the phone, I froze. It had been years. My fingers went numb around the receiver. About Ethan? I repeated, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. He hesitated, then quietly said, He's in trouble. He's losing everything. I didn't say anything. My heart didn't race this time. It stayed still, heavy, like it was listening. He burned too many bridges, his brother continued. Investments failed. People turned on him. He asked about you. Of course he did. That's how people like him worked. The ones who thought love was control. The ones who built their castles out of manipulation and called it protection. When the tower falls, they look for the ones they used to tower over. Tell him I hope he finds peace, I said softly, but he won't find it through me. And that was it. That was the closure I never thought I'd have. Not with screams or tears, but with quiet certainty. The kind that doesn't need validation, doesn't crave revenge, just peace. A week later, I found myself back where everything began. The same restaurant where he once told me I'd never make it without him. It had been remodeled, new lighting, new furniture, but the ghosts were still there, lingering in the corners. I sat by the window, ordered tea, and stared out at the city skyline that used to feel so unreachable. Now it was mine, piece by piece, fight by fight. The book was a success. The interviews kept coming. I'd become a face people recognized, not because I chased fame, but because I told the truth. My truth, Sometimes people came up to me, their voices trembling. You helped me leave someone who made me feel small. And every time I'd smile and tell them the same thing. You were always powerful. You just forgot. The night was cool, the city humming with life. I looked at my reflection in the window, confident, calm, whole. That woman wasn't the one who cried herself to sleep while pretending everything was fine. She wasn't the one who begged to be seen, loved, or saved. She saved herself. Then my phone buzzed again, a new message from an unknown number. For a moment I hesitated, expecting another echo from the past. But when I opened it, I laughed quietly. It was a photo, one of me from a recent shoot. The caption read, "Look who made it without them. No name. No clue who sent it. Maybe a friend, maybe a stranger." But it didn't matter, because they were right. I had made it. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because I'd stopped living for their approval. I looked up at the city lights again, the air crisp against my skin, and whispered, almost to myself, I made it without you. But more than that, I made it for me, and maybe that's what real revenge is. Not the anger, not the proving, but the peace that comes when you realize the story was never about them. It was about you, finding yourself again, piece by piece, until the person they tried to break becomes the person they can't touch. I finished my tea, left the restaurant, and walked out into the cool night air. The streets glowed under streetlights. Cars hummed past. My reflection followed me in the glass of every shop window. Stronger, freer, alive. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from anyone or toward anyone. I was just walking, forward. And maybe that's all the proof I ever needed. What would you have done in my situation? Tell me in the comments.